Well, what a week 5 in the Premier League. Folks, we are back, Noel and I, with another episode of the 6 Yard Line podcast. Well, Noel, some interesting football this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought there were some very up and down games this week. I thought there was some games that, quite frankly, bored me to death. And there's a lot of, I seem to have every game that seemed to have controversy or something interesting happened. I didn't seem to watch it, so I picked all the Snorefest games to watch. I think this week, and then I had to go and watch the highlights of all the interesting games. Because I'll be honest with you, I didn't watch United Chelsea because I thought it was going to be a snore fest. I thought it was going to be a 0-0. You never know what Chelsea's going to do. You never know what Man United is going to do. I didn't think it would be half as entertaining as it was, but I guess we can start there. I guess we
Yeah.
can start with that game because I'll be honest, like I didn't know the score. All I saw was about, I think, 70 minutes in. I saw the two red cards, and I just assumed that it was a punch up that's gone wrong, and it was going to be one of those. All right, so then I went back and watched the highlights, and it was like, oh my god, Sanchez off in 4 minutes for what? Again, we've said it on this show so many times. Like, I don't know why Chelsea didn't go and buy a world class goalkeeper. They spent billions. They've got 7 keepers, and they still play him Sanchez, and he's kamikaze run out to get sent off after 4 minutes. Just killed the game, right? And I don't know. I just United scored, and then it kind of just felt like, okay, they're just going to close this out, and then when I saw Casemiro get that yellow card in the highlights, I'm like, oh, that's who the second red is going to be.
Yeah.
And I watched it back a few times. I don't really see that second yellow as a yellow. I really don't. When you see some of the tackles earlier in the day in some of the other games, that's not a yellow. That's obviously United had a 2-0 lead at that point, and then Chelsea pulls one back. But I felt the referee was looking to balance that out. That's how I felt about that game.
Yeah. I'm not going to dwell too much on the second yellow with Casemiro. Where I have to question is, all right, Chelsea, your keeper makes a mental blunder. You're now down to 10 men. You have to make of all substitutions that you never expect to make it, in the 5th minute is
4
your
minutes
keeper.
in.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you have to make that sub. Then at some point you take off Palmer, Neto, and who else was it that you took off? Like you made 3 subs that.
Palmer's injured though, right?
Yes, he is reported that he did receive a knock, but Neto, on that wing, why is he coming up? Like you have to wonder, like, did you already decide? All right, we're not gonna have an opportunity to win this game, so I want to at least try to minimize the score line. Like I don't know what his decision making was when it came to the substitutions. Now again, I get you. You're down, man. You have to, maybe you figure your team just doesn't have what it takes today. I don't know. You know what? Man United needed this probably more than Chelsea needed the win with the pressure with Amarin. We talked about it last week. He's got what? There's rumors that he's got 3 games to save his job, right? We know that there's that Man United fan that was attacked because of his 5-game wins in a row streak. So he's got that Afro, and then it's spilling out into the fans where fans are now arguing with each other. He's at a game and somebody decides to be a douche to hit. Like Man United is just an all-around joke and a bit of a soap opera that you almost have to watch week in, week out, regardless of what you see on the pitch. Just you have to watch because what drama is going to, come out of this week.
But it's like I think it's the same as the Dallas Cowboys, right? Like it's a soap opera every week. It's a big team, but what people don't understand, all this drama, all this stuff generates money, interest, it's likes, it's clicks, and they are, like the Cowboys, there might be a complete tire fire, but they're making money like crazy because there's always someone wants to read about it, somebody wants to be involved in it, and I just, just that's United, but on the Chelsea side of it, I just can't stand Maresca. I didn't like his comments on Sterling. I didn't like his comments I just find him very negative, and I find him a very. He's like the reason why I don't like Chelsea games is they don't have. They're a team with no personality. They're like dry toast, and nobody wants dry toast in life, right? It's just they just they're hard to swallow. Like I just don't really enjoy watching. I don't like their style of football. I don't like the way they operate. I don't like the way that the owner operates. And people get on me all the time about Marinakis at Forest, but Todd Bowley's involved in this black market ticket thing, which is always interesting. I just I don't know. I just find Maresca is just he's just and these
I,
tactics are just boring.
I'm not a fan of his. I find he's a bit of, I don't want to say a douche, but he kind of he has that vibe about him where I can see why people get turned off by him. His personality just doesn't work for me. I agree with you with his comments this week. Like, regardless of the Sterling situation, I think he made a comment last week that was just not called for. And it just shows, you know what, like you just don't seem to be the right fit to lead Chelsea to that next level. And I get it. He's won a couple trophies. If you're a Chelsea fan, you
He won
probably
a bunch
think
of
he's.
Mickey Mouse trophies.
I'm not disputing that. No, you and I,
A couple
you,
of billion. Like I just find for a team that's spent that much money,
yep.
they look that disorganized, and the players, no
But
offense, they look that uninterested. If you take Cole Palmer out of it, and Cole Palmer aside, he's on the hype train, because everyone. I just
overhype. Like he's a
he's
great player,
overhyped.
but he's not like he did something the other day. Was it when did they lose their Champions League game?
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
I'm sorry. I have a big issue with players celebrating their goals when your team's losing. Like it's not
Yeah.
about you, right? But anyways, that's a different conversation. The point is, I just think Chelsea, you know what? You talk a big game, you act like we're one of the big teams. We can, compete with the rest. But like when you look at how you've spent your money, you're just showing off that you have money, but you actually haven't spent it wisely. And I think everyone can see that your defense is trash, your keeper is trash. You want to spend over $200 billion, but if you're not actually investing it in the key quality players, you have like 7 to 10 players that all play the same position. You have no actual sense of how you're trying to build for the long term to build a winning. You just want to be able to, like, you know what, you didn't work this week, I'm going to throw this guy in there. That's not building a sustainable long term football club. It's just you're just throwing money and hoping it sticks.
Well, I think it's more about they're trying to just find players to make money off long term. I think this is a business over a win, and I think that's kind of what you're starting to see more and more now. It's just they're trying to make money, and we saw it in the off season, right, with their transfer dealings going out. They made a lot of good money, as much as we all mocked them, but they made a lot of good money. But I think that's the business model, and I think to your point, you've got a coach that I don't think knows how to play the players he's got, and I don't think he knows how to get the best out of them. And I just looked at that lineup, and again, it's just one of those. I don't know. I find them very. I just don't enjoy watching them play. I find their style of football's very dull. I don't get the whole point of signing players like Garnacho and stuff like that when you've already got wingers in that position. It's just turning a profit and everything
That's
else.
my point. That's my point. But you know what? For Man United, they needed that win. I think it was a massive result for them. The problem is they've got to try to, do that back to back to back. And it doesn't matter who you are, to win even 3 games in a row in the Premier League is not easy.
No, and I think that's the thing that's got to be said, right? Like it's not this league is unforgiving. You can have a great game one week, and then the next week you can get absolutely pummeled and humiliated, and you get found out pretty quick in this league. And I think that's generally where United needs to be consistent, and I think that's the problem with United. He needs to be, hammering, and it's good for him. Like he said, he's going to stick to his tactics, and like if you're going to go down, you might as well go down doing it your way, trying to change it to somebody else's way, but. they've got some points on the board, and I think that's the biggest takeaway for the week for them.
Yeah, definitely. So that's pretty much, there's not much really to get into that game. That wasn't, I think the excitement was all the other extracurricular activities that happened throughout the game versus say the game itself. But we'll move on. Now, I think the next big game was on Sunday, and I think this was probably, on paper, the biggest match of the weekend. And I think it was a bit of a dud if you're neutral, in the sense of I think you were expecting a little bit more. All right, let's see what these coaches, like from a coaching perspective, I think we were expecting more. We're expecting Pep to try to, use his creativity, the way he likes his team to have ball position, move from the back. Arteta, you were wondering, is he going to release the handbrakes? And you got probably the total opposite from, well, I think Arteta was Arteta, and Pep was more like Arteta in the sense of his team was, wasn't really trying to be the juggernaut of the past. They weren't playing it out from the back. Now, Donnarumma isn't one to have good, ball control with his feet. So, what's your take? 1-1 draw.
The most exciting part of this is Erling Haaland just taunting Arsenal. I think that was the most exciting thing about it. So, they score after 3 minutes, and then, it's like you say, again, it wasn't
9 minutes. 9 minutes.
Was it 9 minutes? It felt like an eternity since he scored until when Arsenal scored. And again, as I said, I watched all the Doll games, so this was one of them. This was like, I think I said it about Toronto FC's first half the other day. There's 45 minutes of my life I'd like back. There was 90 minutes of my life I'd like back from that game. There's just not a lot in it. I will say I like Eze at Arsenal. I think obviously he got the assist on the goal. I think he's a breath of fresh air on that team.
But why is he on the bench? Why did he not start? And I think that's everybody's question.
That's the problem. Like, he plays with the handbrake on, and I just want to watch Arsenal go full tilt. Because when they went full tilt against Forest, they were sensational, right? But he doesn't play that way.
Even against Liverpool.
Yeah, he plays with the handbrake on. Let them go. Like, I just don't understand. It just, if you want to win the league, you've got to go. You've got to go and try and you might win 5-4, but you're gonna lose games or you give up points. I just don't see the point in Arsenal trying. If they're not going to try, if you're going to buy these players that are attacking, that are free flowing footballers, why are they on the bench? Eze looked by far the best player. 2 weeks ago against Forest, I thought he was outstanding. Outstanding. Yeah. Like he was dominant. He was all over the park. He picking passes left, right, and center, making runs. The following game, I can't remember who they played, but he looked excellent. And then he's on the bench against City, which City's there to be picked, right? City's still in that. We've got young kids. We're trying to develop the system again. We haven't got everybody back that we want to be back, and we aren't playing a certain way. And they were there for the taking. And then at the end of the day, you play with a handbrake on, and Haaland's going to do what he does because the guy does it consistently, and then you have to leave it late, and Martinelli rescues it, on the back of Eze again. But I don't know. I tend to find these top of the big team clashes tend to be really not that great anymore. There's not been a real good feisty game between anybody lately, and I think when you sit down and look at the Premier League, sometimes that's what makes the Premier League, is those feisty encounters. But that game was just the epitome of boring match. Of just, this is why we're trying not to lose and trying to get a point, as opposed to trying to win a game. And I don't know. I didn't really enjoy that.
Well, we talked about this, going into this past weekend, how this year's been a disappointment, I guess is the best way to describe it. When what we're seeing on the pitch, the games have not been interesting. They've been pretty dull and boring. Like, you're lucky if you can get 2 exciting games out of the 10 games over a weekend. Like, they haven't been exciting so far. And whether it's still early and things will eventually, work itself out, but it's just the games and the team, like, you're expecting to see, the top teams who've spent so much money this summer, play a little bit more dominant football. You expect to see teams having more fight, more desire to compete. Teams that were European teams last year are struggling to look at Villa finally getting one goal. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's been, I think, the total opposite from what any fan has expected from this Premier League. And it's been probably one of the, if you're neutral, one of the worst starts a league could have for the casual viewer if you want to keep them connected.
Yeah,
Because it's got,
you look at the games, right? You got Bournemouth, Newcastle was a 0-0. Sunderland Villa
yep,
was 1-1. Arsenal was 1-1. So you had no winners on Sunday. Then Saturday you had Liverpool 2-1, Brighton 2-2 with Tottenham, Burnley
one
Forest 1-1, West Ham
Palace.
2-1, and then Wolves Leeds was 3-1, I think, and then United 2-1, and then Fulham 3-1. There wasn't a lot of goals, a lot of big wins. There was not a lot of. There's just not a lot of any goals in general, and you just highlighted Villa there, right? And then it's a good segue into the Wolves, because Villa and Wolves at the bottom of the league struggling to score goals, and even some of the teams, like you look at the bottom teams that one shot, one goal, that's it. They're defending that for all their life, right? So yeah, it's just not exciting to watch at the moment. And I think, as I said, like you look at the games and you think, okay, I'll watch this one, think which one, might be an interesting, result. But I think, we can move on to the Wolves Leeds game, because that obviously was a 4 goals. Wolves scored, and but again, they're struggling. And as we mentioned earlier in the week, they just signed Pereira to a 3-year extension.
Makes no sense. Your team is trash. You are struggling on all levels. Like, yeah, fine. You scored 3 goals so far, but you've conceded 12. You have a -9 goals against average. You scored early and then conceded 3 against a team. Like, let's look at Leeds. Leeds right now has 7 points, right? Leeds is tied with technically Man City on points. They're comfortably, like, if the season were to end today, not one of the teams that got promoted are in the relegation battle, which is good that's actually a good thing.
Yeah, that is a very good thing.
Right? Because, what we've seen in the past. But it begs the question, when you see a team like Villa, a team like West Ham, maybe not so much Wolves, but you see, when you get rated, well, okay, not Villa, because Villa has to be bad management why they're in the position they are in, because you go from it being in the Champions League last season to now in the relegation battle with no wins, no goal, or 1 goal. That has to be just, it comes down to, like, the management of the club doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah,
Because
I
that's a
think that's fair,
major
because
fall off.
if you look at Ollie Watkins, and I give you a good example, from the sounds of it, from all the things that we heard over the summer, Villa were trying to unload Ollie Watkins, right? Which I don't really understand why. I didn't know what they were
They
trying
haven't.
to
Who's going to
bring in.
score?
I didn't really understand. I didn't understand that they were, offering him to United and, 60 million and thingies. So you kind of get the vibe, and you got the vibe at the end of last season that they wanted to move on from Ollie Watkins, which I didn't understand why. And then you look at the team, you look at who they were trying to bring in, you look at some of the players that have come in, and they're just not scoring goals. And it's pretty simple. And Wolves are the same. Wolves, the ownership is giving Pereira a new contract because they simply know that they're cutting corners to save money. I think Wolves ownership is already preparing to go down.
Yeah.
I just don't see the investment. We said it in the offseason. I had the same questions about Fulham. I still have the same questions about Fulham. They spent, on the last day of the window, they spent 60 odd million, but they didn't spend a lot of money. So I don't really understand where the financial side, and maybe because obviously we don't follow some of these teams in depthly, right? And I think that's sometimes where now I have my curiosity. When I get 5 minutes, I'll sit go and look at the money and all that kind of stuff, because I just don't understand Villa. I don't understand Wolves. And when you're losing at home, when Wolves are losing at home to Leeds, and then on the back of the manager getting a new 3-year deal. And I looked at the player ratings by the fans from Wolves the other day, and the highest player was like 3.8. Like it's just
That's generous.
that's generous. But at the end of the day, I think if you look at it, good job for Leeds. You can only beat who's in front of you, and at the end of the day, like Wolves, I think Wolves are in a real big trouble because early there's no signs of life. I just don't see the signs of life, and I think Villa will be fine. I just, it's one of those, people are overreacting on Villa. It's a bit
Uh,
like the Forest situation. A lot of people are overreacting on that as well. But at the end of the day, when you look at their teams, they will eventually get it right at some point going down the line. It's just whether they're not listening to Emery, whether they have some internal things going on. They will come good. I just don't think it will be next 2 weeks. You know what I mean? And the season's a long season.
no, I hear you, but I still think, like, I don't think Villa is out of the woods because if you look at all the firepower they had to, say, for example, starting of last season compared to now, they've lost a lot of scoring options, right? You had a Martinez that looked like he was on his way out. Like, it just seemed like Villa was going into a new direction and their plans didn't work out this summer. And now they're like, all right, what are we going to do? Right? Looks like
That's what I mean.
Watkins
I
was
think
supposed to go.
you kind of get the vibe that something was done on the back end with some of the key players, and now there's a drop off because of that. So, Emi Martinez, everyone's been saying he's been the best goalkeeper in the world for the last couple of years, and I would say it's a stretch. But at the end of the day, he's been pretty solid. But you're trying to sell him to United. You're trying to sell Ollie Watkins to United. You're trying to there's something that's not quite right in that process, right? And Wolves, we know what they've done. Their model is to buy players, try and sell players, make some money, and stay in the Premier League. That's what they are right now.
Yeah, but
That's their ownership.
clearly, yeah, and I looking at Wolves' situation, they're definitely um, they're going to be in a struggle all season long. I just don't see them having the firepower to get out of that relegation battle, and they're going to, unless they make some major moves in the summer, or sorry, in the January transfer window. I don't see them getting out of this rut. Right? I just think they're just not strong enough to get out of it with the current roster they have. Like, even to gain, the few points here and there that they'll need to gain to kind of at least be, say, anywhere from 12th to 17th, right? And one or two wins and boom, you're out of the relegation zone. But the problem is based on what I'm seeing of that squad week in, week out, I just don't see it.
Yeah, well, they're off to Tottenham on the weekend, so it's just I don't know if you can see how that goes, but yeah, they just both those are not good, and I think I guess we can touch on the fact that there's some managers still on the hot seat. Obviously, Nuno's gone, was the first one gone. Looks like Graham Potter's going to be the second one gone. West Ham lost again. They don't look anywhere like a unit. They don't, they had their only win is against a Forest side that was pretty much in turmoil. And, it looks like Nuno will be the first one hired into the Premier League because it looks like he'll get the West Ham job. So, it's when does that happen? Well, I wouldn't be surprised if it's not after this weekend.
You know what? My prediction is between now and the next international break.
I think it'll be the next 2 weeks.
It depends on results. Like, if we look at who's West Ham playing this coming weekend, they play Everton on the road next Monday. I don't see them getting a result there, so it's quite conceivable it could happen then. And then they go right into Arsenal after that. So he's got basically 2 games to try to save his job, and I just don't see it happening. Right? Even if you
No,
look at
I think there's already talks with Nuno. I think that's the it's not that hard to figure that out, right? Like I think he's already on the queued up list, right? And it's a good move for West Ham. You know, look what he did at Forest, right? So I just think he's probably a better fit for the pragmatic style that West Ham are probably better off and more suited to playing. Because if you look at how Nuno plays and look at how David Moyes plays, they're a bit more pragmatic than the way. The problem is with West Ham. The problem is with Wolves. Like they just don't have this consistent style where you are what you exactly want to be, and I think that's the problem, and I think Nuno will be probably at West Ham before next weekend, if not after that.
All right. Well, let's wait and see what coaching changes happen next. Let's quickly recap, I guess, the rest of the scores for the past weekend. So we'll start off with the first game, which was Liverpool 2, Everton 1. As you mentioned, Burnley and Forest, a 1-1 draw. Brighton and Spurs 2-2. West Ham losing to Palace 2-1. Wolves losing to Leeds 3-1. As we mentioned, Man U beating Chelsea 2-1. Fulham 3-1, which, we touched on Fulham at the beginning of the season, and you actually didn't expect them to do well. And surprisingly enough, they've been getting some good results so far. So,
You know what?
they're
With
fine.
the thing is with Fulham, I worry about them in terms of if they get 3 or 4 injuries,
Yeah, then they're
I,
done.
they're in
Yeah.
real trouble. And I do, they got 8 points. They played well. And Marco Silva, again another good manager that could end up at somewhere like West Ham if they don't go with Nuno. But like, I just think they're 3 or 4 injuries away from being in a world of trouble because they
Them
don't have a huge amount of depth.
Yeah, I know. I definitely agree with you. They need their best players to be on the pitch for them to continue to do well. Sunderland won, Villa won. Sunderland went down to 10 men, by the way, but still were able to get the draw. Bournemouth 0, Newcastle 0. A bad result for Newcastle in the sense of they're struggling to get the points this season so far. They will, I'm sure, figure things out, but definitely disappointing. Another good result for the Cherries. They've been one of the biggest surprises so far this season. But similar to Fulham, if they start to get injuries again, how sustainable will that be? And then
Yeah.
finally, Arsenal won, City won. So some interesting results, I guess, this past weekend. This coming weekend, you know, every weekend we start to look at it, and there's really not we're always looking for that intriguing matchup, and I'm not seeing it again this weekend. Like,
Yeah, you know what? You know what I'm intrigued for is obviously Forest against Sunderland because, as I just said to you off air, I didn't realize that Ange's first 4 games are all away from home, so it will be interesting to see how he plays at home. It'll be interesting to see how the fans react at home. The fan base is still split pretty much 50-50. So, there's that's a little bit of a personal intrigue, I think, this weekend, just to see how that reaction is, because I do think it will be something that's very, very interesting to see, because obviously they're away this week to Real Betis in Spain in the Europa League. So I think it will be good to see how he plays. And that Forest Burnley game, Forest had 17 shots on goal, which is the most they've had in the Premier League in a very, 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 very long time. So, it's credit to Burnley's defense. They, as the Liverpool fans out, like, they can hang on with the best of them. So, yeah, it's that's about it really. There's not a lot that's other than that, because I say it's not a round of fixtures where you start there going, oh, this is going to be absolutely banging. There's not really a lot up there that's that
battle of
exciting.
battle of the undefeated, maybe. Palace hosting Liverpool, the only two teams yet to drop or lose a game. That's kind of the, if you're stretching when you're kind of looking for things like that as entertainment value.
Yeah, it's yeah, the Newcastle Arsenal might be interesting. It depends if Arteta takes the handbrake off or not, but we'll see.
Especially them being on the road. Yeah, that could be a good one. So, well, that's pretty much it for this week. We'll have to see how the results go. What are you anticipating for Forest in Europe You know, you've got their first game returning. Was it tomorrow?
Yeah, it's today's Tuesday. Yeah, it's Wednesday tomorrow. Yeah, they are, and then Villa plays Thursday against Bologna. You know what? It's been well. I looked this up the other day because I had to look it up for myself. Because that last European game, I think I went out with my dad, which was Bayern Munich, which was March 18th, 1996. So do the math. It's
That's
20,
almost
20 it's 29
almost
years ago.
yeah. I was just gonna say it's
Um,
almost 30 years. Yeah.
I still remember that match. I don't remember a lot of games, but I remember that match. Yeah, it's crazy to think, and you know, it's away first, which sucks, but you know, man, that's what you dream of. And I don't know if you ever looked at the Real Betis team. It's like the Premier League old boys United. Like it's literally like half of Man City, West Ham United, and they've got like Fornells. They've got it's Manuel Pellegrini as the coach. They've got Anthony. They've got actually. You know who we also know is on that team is Chucho Hernandez from Columbus Crew.
Oh
He's
my.
there and he's scoring. So it's yeah, it's an interesting Betis team. We'll have a little short on it this week for a
They're probably
preview.
the favorite.
They're in the favorites for the Europa League. The top five: Forest, Betis, and Roma and Villa. So they're all in there. So it'll be a good game. I'm thinking it's going to be a 1-1 draw. I'll take a draw on the way on the first one back.
Don't be mad at me, but I'm going with a 2-1 Betis win.
It
I'm
depends
just
on how, it depends on
I
how
haven't.
Andy plays.
That's my worry is that I just haven't seen anything from Ange yet, and I think it might take him a little longer than just a month to kind of implement his style with the guys, and we'll see, right? Like some players adapt quicker than others, but I just that is my worry, especially that Betis had a good run last season, so I anticipate they'll have another. They have their core together, so they kind of are a little bit more experienced when it comes to this tournament.
Absolutely.
So that is it. I know Liverpool play in the Carabao Cup today against they're heading to Southampton, so I'll catch that later, and maybe I'll jump on and chat about that post game.
All right, sounds good.
All right, well, that's it for us this week. As usual, make sure you hit the subscribe button and don't forget to smash that like button. Thanks for joining us. Have a good one, folks.
Thanks, guys.